There's a number that is quietly terrifying everyone who understands what it means. 5. Just 5 years. That is how long a top Google executive says we have before quantum computers stop being a lab experiment and start running real-world applications that could shatter the foundations of modern digital security. And the most unsettling part is not the timeline itself. The most unsettling part is what is already happening right now, today, while you're reading this, before a single quantum computer has broken a single piece of encryption. Something called the harvest has already begun. And by the time most people understand what that means, it will be too late to stop it. Let's start with the basics, because if you do not understand what quantum computing actually is, the rest of this does not land the way it should. Every computer you have ever used, your phone, your laptop, the servers running Netflix, the systems processing your bank transactions, all of them operate on the same fundamental principle. They store and process information as bits. A bit is either a 0 or a 1. Everything digital, every photo, every password, every encrypted message, every financial record, it is all ultimately a sequence of zeros and ones. Classical computers are incredibly powerful at manipulating these bits, but they are limited by the fact that each bit can only be one thing at a time. Quantum computers work on a completely different physical principle. Instead of bits, they use qubits, quantum bits, that exploit a property of quantum mechanics called superposition. A qubit does not have to be just a 0 or just a 1. It can exist in a combination of both states simultaneously until it is measured. This sounds abstract, but the practical consequence is enormous. While a classical computer solving a problem with many possible answers has to check options one by one, a quantum computer can effectively explore a massive number of possibilities in parallel. The more qubits you add, the exponentially more powerful this becomes. Add entanglement, another quantum property where qubits become linked so that the state of one instantly affects another, and you have a computational architecture that operates according to rules that classical physics simply cannot replicate. For decades, this has all been theoretical. Qubits are extraordinarily fragile. Any interference from the environment, a vibration, a temperature fluctuation, stray, electromagnetic radiation, even cosmic rays, causes errors. These errors accumulate as the system scales up, and for years this was the wall that stopped quantum computing from becoming practical. You could build a small quantum processor, but the moment you tried to scale it up to handle real-world problems, the errors grew faster than your ability to correct them, and the whole system collapsed into uselessness. That is the wall Google claims to have started breaking through with their Willow chip, announced in December 2024. And if you understand what Willow actually demonstrated, the 5-year timeline suddenly stops sounding like optimism and starts sounding like a countdown. Like and subscribe. The Willow chip contains 105 qubits, but the raw qubit count is not the breakthrough. The breakthrough is what happened to error rates as the team scaled the system up. In every quantum computer built before Willow, adding more qubits meant more errors. The system got noisier the bigger it got. Willow reversed that relationship. When Google's researchers scaled from a 3x3 grid of physical qubits to a 5x5 grid and then to a 7x7 grid, the error rate did not go up. It went down by a factor of 2 each time. This is known in the field as achieving below threshold performance, and it is a milestone that quantum researchers have been pursuing for 3 decades since physicist Peter Shor first introduced the concept of quantum error correction in 1995. To illustrate just how powerful Willow was, Google ran a benchmark computation on it and compared the result to classical supercomputers. The best classical supercomputer in the world at the time, a machine called Frontier, filling a large building and consuming enormous amounts of electricity, would take 10 septillion years. To complete the same task Willow finished in under 5 minutes. 10 septillion years. That is not a typo. That is a 1 followed by 25 zeros. It is longer than the current age of the universe by an almost incomprehensible margin. Google ran it in 5 minutes. Now, in fairness, that benchmark was specifically engineered to highlight quantum advantages and does not represent a real-world computing task. Google's own researchers acknowledge this. Willow cannot yet break encryption, design drugs, or solve the optimization problems that quantum computing is expected to eventually dominate. But what it proved is the architecture works. The error correction approach works. The path to a useful, large-scale quantum computer is real, and it is not centuries away. That is why the 5-year estimate from a Google VP is being taken seriously by the people who understand quantum hardware. Not because quantum will be magic in 5 years, but because the technical barriers that everyone said were insurmountable are now falling faster than expected. The Google VP, who made this statement, echoing remarks reported across major tech outlets in late 2025, was not alone. Multiple researchers and executives from competing quantum programs made similar predictions. IBM's quantum roadmap targets verified quantum advantage on practical commercial problems by the end of 2026, and their Nighthawk processor is being positioned as the system most likely to deliver it. IonQ, using a different quantum architecture based on trapped ions rather than superconducting circuits, documented in early 2025 what may be the first case of a quantum computer genuinely outperforming classical high-performance computing on a real-world task. A medical device fluid dynamics simulation, where the quantum system beat classical HPC by 12%. These are not press releases from companies trying to attract investors. These are peer-reviewed results logged in scientific literature. Like and subscribe. But here is the piece of the puzzle that should unsettle you the most, and it is the one that most mainstream coverage completely glosses over. The danger from quantum. Computing does not begin when the first cryptographically powerful quantum computer switches on. The danger is already here, and it has been growing for years. Intelligence agencies across multiple countries have been publicly warning about an attack strategy called Harvest Now, Decrypt Later. The premise is exactly what it sounds like. Adversaries, nation-state actors, sophisticated criminal organizations are intercepting and storing encrypted data right now. They cannot read it, the encryption is currently holding, but they are betting that within a decade or 15 years, quantum computers will give them the ability to break the encryption they collected years earlier, retroactively exposing everything they harvested. Think about what that means in practice. If you sent an encrypted email in 2020 and that email was intercepted and stored by a sophisticated adversary, that email may become readable in the early 2030s. If your company transmitted trade secrets over an encrypted connection in 2022 and someone captured that traffic, those secrets are sitting in a vault waiting for the quantum key to open them. If government agencies sent classified communications in 2019 and those communications were intercepted, they are already compromised in principle. The decryption is just deferred. The Cyber Threat Alliance published a major report in early 2026 titled Approaching Quantum Dawn, and it confirmed explicitly that this harvesting is not hypothetical. It is active. It is ongoing. And you cannot patch a breach that happened 5 years ago. The mathematics underlying this threat is what makes it genuinely irreversible. The most widely used encryption systems protecting internet traffic today, RSA and elliptic curve cryptography, ORECC, are secure against classical computers because they depend on mathematical problems that are computationally impossible to brute force with conventional hardware. Breaking 2048-bit RSA with a classical computer would take longer than the age of the universe. But there is a quantum algorithm called Shor's algorithm, developed in 1994, that can solve these problems in polynomial time on a sufficiently powerful quantum computer. In other words, once a large enough fault-tolerant quantum computer exists, RSA and ECC become worthless. Every piece of data ever protected by these algorithms, and that means effectively all encrypted internet traffic for the past 3 decades, becomes vulnerable. The question that the entire cybersecurity industry is racing to answer is, when does that quantum computer arrive? And will the world finish migrating to quantum-resistant encryption before it does? Like and subscribe. Google's own VP of Security Engineering, Heather Adkins, published a blog post in March 2026 that essentially told the world the clock is moving faster than previously estimated. She and her co-author set a 2029 deadline for Google's internal migration to post-quantum cryptography, or PQC. The reasoning was explicit. New developments in quantum hardware, quantum error correction, and specifically in quantum factoring resource estimates have changed. The calculus. The number of qubits needed to break 2048-bit RSA encryption has been dropping dramatically. Estimates that once stood at 20 million qubits required for a cryptographically relevant attack dropped by mid-2025 to under 1 million. By early 2026, some research suggested algorithms that could potentially threaten RSA with fewer than 100,000 qubits, and IBM's roadmap target systems with over 4,000 qubits by 2026 to 2027, with error-corrected systems following shortly after. The U.S. National Institute of Standards and Technology finalized its first 3 post-quantum cryptographic standards in August 2024. These are new mathematical algorithms designed to resist quantum attacks, built on problems that quantum computers cannot solve efficiently. NIST set a broad target of 2035 for critical systems to complete the transition. The NSA issued a mandate requiring that all new national security system acquisitions comply with its post-quantum algorithm suite by January 2027. The European Union instructed member states to develop post-quantum cryptography transition plans by the end of 2026, with critical infrastructure required to be quantum safe by 2030. The G7 formally declared 2026 the year of quantum security. These are not technical organizations having internal debates. These are governments issuing legal mandates because they have access to intelligence about how fast the threat is maturing. Google has been moving faster than most. Android 17 integrated post-quantum digital signature protection using an algorithm called MLDSA, the quantum-resistant signature standard aligned with NIST's finalized specifications. Google Chrome began supporting post-quantum key exchange in production. By late 2025, over half of all human-initiated traffic on the Cloudflare network, one of the largest internet infrastructure companies in the world, was already using post-quantum key agreement. These are not experiments. These are live deployments at massive scale, happening because the people who understand the threat assessment best are treating this as an urgent operational problem, not a future theoretical risk. The part that almost nobody talks about publicly, but that is openly discussed in national security circles, is the asymmetry of this threat. Migrating the entire global internet infrastructure to quantum-resistant cryptography is a process that takes years. Some estimates say 5 to 10 years even with serious effort. Every web server, every authentication system, every encrypted communications channel, every banking system, every piece of hardware that performs cryptographic operations has to be updated. This cannot happen overnight. It cannot happen in a year. The window to complete this migration before a cryptographically relevant quantum computer appears is finite, and it is closing. And AI is accelerating the timeline from the other direction. Like and subscribe. Research published simultaneously by Google and a spin-off company called Oratomic in early 2026 showed that AI-assisted methods for quantum algorithm discovery are producing results that are, in the words of one researcher, crazy. AI tools are being used to find more efficient quantum circuits, reduce the overhead required for quantum error correction, and identify shortcuts in quantum factoring algorithms that no human researcher had found through conventional methods. A 2025 expert survey found a 39% chance that quantum computers capable of breaking standard internet encryption would arrive within the next decade. Before the Willow results and the subsequent AI-assisted research published in early 2026, that estimate would have seemed pessimistic. Now, some researchers are saying it is optimistic. So what should a normal person make of all this? The honest answer is that most of this transition is happening and will continue to happen at a level you do not directly interact with. If you use a browser that has been updated in the last year, there is a reasonable chance that some of your internet traffic is already protected by hybrid post-quantum key exchange without you having done anything at all. The heavy lifting of this migration is happening at the infrastructure level. The servers, the certificate authorities, the operating systems, the browser vendors. Your responsibility as an individual user is modest compared to the responsibility of organizations handling sensitive data. But there are real-world implications for how you think about data with long shelf lives, medical records, legal documents, financial histories, communications that need to remain confidential for decades. If any of that data is being transmitted or stored using classical encryption right now, and it needs to remain secret for the next 10 to 15 years, the harvest, now decrypt later threat means you are already operating in a window of risk. The question is not whether to take this seriously. The question is whether your organization or your service provider is taking it seriously on your behalf. The 5-year number is not a deadline in the way people think about software update deadlines. It is not the date when everything breaks. It is a horizon point, a rough estimate for when quantum computers begin delivering practical applications that matter. Some of those applications will be miraculous. Quantum simulation of molecular behavior could compress decades of drug discovery research into years. Quantum optimization algorithms could redesign supply chains, financial models, and energy grids in ways that are currently impossible. Quantum enhanced AI could produce models of physical systems that classical computers could never simulate accurately. These are the transformative promises that have driven hundreds of billions of dollars of investment into quantum hardware, quantum software, and quantum talent worldwide. But the same capabilities that make quantum computers powerful tools for discovery make them devastating tools for breaking the mathematical locks that protect everything digital. Both futures are coming from the same machine. Like and subscribe. The race happening right now in government labs, like and subscribe. The race happening right now in government labs, like and subscribe. The race happening right now in government labs, corporate research facilities, intelligence agencies, and university physics departments around the world is a race between building quantum computers and building the defenses that can survive them. Google's VP just told you something important about the pace of that race. 5 years. And the most chilling part is that in the context of how long it takes to secure the global internet, 5 years is not very long at all. To really understand why this 5-year estimate is so significant, you have to understand how wildly wrong the previous estimates were. In 2019, when Google first announced quantum supremacy with its Sycamore processor, most quantum researchers publicly estimated that a cryptographically relevant quantum computer was at minimum 20 to 30 years away. By 2021, consensus had compressed to 15 to 25 years. By 2023, experts were saying 10 to 15 years. By 2025, the range had moved to 5 to 10 years. And now a Google VP is saying 5 years for practical applications, with a post-quantum cryptography migration timeline implying the cryptographic threat could materialize by 2029. Every single revision has moved the date closer, never further. That is the pattern of a technology accelerating, not stalling. Part of what is driving this is an uncomfortable truth about how quantum error correction was historically miscalculated. For years, the argument was that you would need millions of physical qubits to create enough stable logical qubits to run meaningful cryptographic attacks. The assumed error rates were high, meaning enormous physical qubit counts were needed just to create a single reliable logical qubit. Willow's below-threshold demonstration changed this calculation. If error rates drop exponentially as qubit counts increase rather than climbing, the ratio of physical qubits to logical qubits improves dramatically. The arithmetic that justified 20-year timelines starts looking very different. There's also a separate track of algorithmic improvement running in parallel to hardware improvements, and this track is arguably more alarming. Researchers studying quantum factoring have found shortcuts that reduce the required qubit count by orders of magnitude. When you combine hardware that produces fewer errors with algorithms that require fewer qubits, the timeline compresses from both ends simultaneously. Some estimates published in early 2026 suggested that new algorithmic approaches could potentially threaten RSA encryption with fewer than 100,000 qubits. And IBM's roadmap targets systems with over 4,000 qubits by late 2026 to 2027, with error-corrected systems following shortly after. The gap between where the hardware is going and where the threat arrives is narrowing at a pace that few outside the quantum research community expected even 18 months ago. Like and subscribe. The China dimension of this story is also something most coverage underplays. China has been investing